All right, it is another book review. It is July 28th, 2024, and I have finished Ken Follett's Pillars of the Earth. Wow. Absolutely wow. This is immediately in my top, definitely my top 10, maybe my top 5 favorite books of all time I've ever read. And it was transforming, really. And to give, like, without spoilers as much as I can, I guess I'll let you know when there are spoilers. But the first 10% of the book, and I have the percentage on my Kindle, so I know exactly when it was the first 10%, I wasn't really drawn in. Like, the story was happening, but I was waiting for, like, the story I was promised to begin. And the story I was promised was, slight spoilers, there's going to be something built. There's going to be something built, and you're kind of going to be following the building of this thing. And that's all I've heard about this. And then it's a great book, and I thought to myself, all right, I want to get there. But we were going in, like, a weird direction, it felt like. Descending into poverty in the first 10%. But after that 10%, and, like, now we're into spoilers. After Tom gets the job, after Tom gets his main job as the master builder at Kingsbridge, this book absolutely takes off. That first 10% is necessary, and everything that happens there is you're going down, and then you get that huge dopamine of Tom getting the job at Kingsbridge, and it gets you there. But I was just dying here, but you felt really good, and I almost, like, shouted out loud when he got his first job. But all of that was necessary for the rest of the novel, the first 10%. So it was needed, and upon reread, it's going to be a lot better. But once the second 90% happened, I was hooked, absolutely hooked. The villains were on a varying scale of just wicked to downright, like, devilish, right? And then your, like, protagonists, you were really, really rooted for them. Like, every one of their struggles, everywhere that they were, you sympathized with them, and, like, more than you would sympathize with a typical, or at least I did, with a typical protagonist or a typical person in a book going through terrible struggles for whatever reason. And it's definitely the character work. I say for whatever reason, but however he wrote it, Ken Follett wrote specifically, you were really caring for these characters. Whether it be Tom the Builder as he tried to get his life's work started and completed, or Philip, the young monk who wanted to make the world better. Let's just stay there. And then you have, is her name Aliane? I read it, so I don't know how it's said. Aliane, I don't know. You have a whole host of characters like this, and every one of their struggles you are deeply invested in. I was not putting the book down without thinking, how I want this one little thing to succeed. Because how the story goes, it's like, suffer, success. Oh, suffer, success. Suffer, success. It keeps going, right? And you're hanging on until that, like, next success, like, every 5-10% of the book, whatever it was. I was too engaged to know it. But it, if you can't tell, I have stayed up the last 3 days. It's the weekend. I started on the Friday, and I stayed up the whole weekend just basically reading the whole time. And I couldn't put the book down unless I was exhausted from sleep. And I just finished it again. I just finished it right before this, like 10 minutes previous. But all of their struggles, you go with, you feel for them, and then you go, and then they have children, and then you are now multi-generational, and they have children, and they have their own struggles, and you have hopes and dreams and desires for them to do things, right? And what's great about this is not only the care you have for these characters, you really dread the villains, like, and you have the point of view of the villain, um, and it's dreadful because you go into detail. Like, never have I been in a book where you are in the head of a rapist, and the rapist is, it's not just like a few lines or it cuts away or something. No, you are with them, and you are there for the rape, and you are witnessing this person going down from not raping to making that fall, and as they go deeper and deeper. And it was chilling. And you really dread it every time you're in this guy's head, and you're really dreading every time he comes across a Leanne or whatever her name is. And I couldn't put the book down, right? Like, this was is such a great book. And everything that's set up, all the villains, all the hopes and dreams that I've been talking about, and the things that happen, especially like in that first 10%. And as you go on, it comes up, and it pays off big as you go on. Even spoilers, that young monk who Philip like sent off basically to get out of his hair in the very beginning of the book, after he found young Jonathan in the woods. He came back, right, and was a thorn in the side at in the later part, like 35 years later, right? You're going generations, I said, like decades. And the payoffs in this are massive. I don't even know how to even explain that. I don't know if it's coming across, but the payoffs are absolutely massive. The setup, it's a big book. I don't even know how many pages it is, but it's a huge book. And a lot happens in it, and you will, hopefully, but I felt and I feel like this is an instant classic on just how great it is. I don't even know how to explain that. Like, nothing feels inconsequential, and it has the heavy themes and the great quotes that you would see in a classic. After I finished, and I was reading it, I thought of it, oh, this is like the Fountainhead. This is why I'm enjoying it so much. It's like the Fountainhead, and not the objectivist kind of Ayn Randy parts of Fountainhead or any of that I'm referring to. I'm talking about the architect Rourke, how he has to struggle to get his designs looked at and his architectural genius realized, to then go from the bottom and then at the end like build a skyscraper. That struggle, and it's a big book too, that struggle to go from that to having a skyscraper at the end, it feels tangible. It's not just, hey, we have the characters themselves who have some kind of journey and an arc. It's, you have the stories wrapped around that central pillar of the skyscraper in all those houses that are built, but like the final skyscraper that is built at the end. In this book, that central pillar is the Kingsbridge like cathedral, right? And it is all the way through this plot, and all the characters' problems and the resolutions and everything are happening wrapped around this cathedral and what that means. And that just, it's such a great way to write a story and a great foundation to the story. And I felt like this story was written by an incredibly well-researched, intelligent person, and I was like learning so much. It was like fascinating. I know nothing about architecture. I know nothing about the building of churches or a lot of these like obscure, living in the 21st century, but it's not obscure to the folks back then, but exactly how cloth, it goes from like sheep and sheared sheep wool to the clothes, and you see how it gets there, and exactly the back-breaking work it takes to get that cloth to market, sold, and then spun into something, right? It's a big part of the story. You have grain, how it goes from from the field to in the mill to why it's important, right? And then everything is so detailed down to the minute, just like little bit that you feel, oh, got it. This feels super authentic. It's like when you watch a show that is clearly on a soundstage versus a show that they went and built the village and they have reenactors doing it. So everyone in the background is like doing things and churning butter and building and doing things that are actually like authentic, and they're not just, swinging a hammer at nothing, right, in the background, or just milling about, which I feel in other things where you're like, okay, this is just like an Old West movie where they put up the facades. I don't even know what they're called, but they put up just the front of the buildings, but behind it is nothing. It's just a wooden facade. This feels like the real deal. This feels authentic, and that goes to carry the plot. Like everything is perfectly done, perfectly written, perfect. Everything is absolutely perfect. That 10% felt slow. I will say it was a little bit hard to get in, but once you're past that, you're off. And on a reread, that 10% is not going to be slow, because I didn't know the consequences or the importance of that first 10%. I was trying to get through it because I wanted to get to what I thought, like, hey, there's going to be a cathedral somewhere. And once they got there, and I was like, okay, I understand where the plot is at least at and going, I can get into it. But now, like, reading it again, I would know exactly what the purpose of all this stuff is, and I wouldn't notice any problem. But I've been gushing about it a lot. Hopefully you understand just how, I haven't gone into too many spoilers, but enough. But this book will floor you, as it has floored thousands and millions of others, right? It's a bestseller. It's spawned like video games and TV shows and all this, and it's for a reason. Like, it's absolutely fantastic. And I would give this book, honestly, I give it a 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. Knowing now that the 10%, like, I would have rated it lower at that point, and I almost DNF'd it, but I just continued, right? I bought the book, and I heard it was so great. But knowing exactly how I explained it, it's a 10 out of 10 book. Absolutely floored me, brought me through all the ranges of emotions. I almost jumped for joy like a billion times in this book, because you're brought so low so many times, and then just the rush of excitement mixed with relief and elation. You don't get that often with books, honestly. At least I don't. Most of those emotions are muted and not built up enough. Like in movies and TV shows, the creators get that more easily through music in the back, and it's easier to do that and kind of bring a reaction to an audience that is easier done through the use of sight and sound rather than just reading. And it's hard to do. That's why it's an art, right? All of it's an art, but with a book it's different, and I feel it's harder. And Ken Follett does it perfectly. 10 out of 10. Recommend. There is no reason you shouldn't be reading this, no matter who you are. It's a fantastic book, and I plan on reading the next book, whatever it is. I think it's a whole different story entirely, but if it's 80% as good as this book, it will be one of the best books I've ever read. So with that, on to the next one.